Hey Katie, how's it going? This is Kenny from class. Here you're running a half Ironman coming up soon, maybe tomorrow. Half Ironman, huh? Yeah, pussy. No, just kidding. Um, I commend you on your abilities. I actually too just got through a half Ironman competition myself. I know how tough it can be. The only thing is with the half Ironman that I was in, it involved eating Ben and Jerry's ice cream. So yeah, I came in third. Let's take a look at your PR here. The notes that I had, the main notes that I had was I think you have a really great walk going on here. It really conveys a good happy-go-lucky attitude. There's a lot of personality in that walk, um, and I think it's great. I think the thought that I had about him looking around after he gets pooped on is that I think that if we as humans got, had some warm gooey substance plopped on our head, I think just our natural tendency would be to reach for it and be like, ew, what is that, And I think that our first inclination might not be to look around. Our first inclination would be to see what is on us. And then depending on what it is, we would look around. So like obviously if we get hit by a water balloon, it would probably hit us in our back or something like that. We would feel all wet and we would pretty much know that, okay, someone must have thrown something. But if we get some warm goo on our head, and then I think our first inclination would be to reach for it, and then we would get it on our fingers, and then we would look at our fingers and then go, ew, gross. But we would know that nobody threw anything at us, so like maybe you might want to get rid of the looking around first, because it's like he gets splatted on, and then he looks around, and then he reaches for the head, or he or she. Um, and I think if you went from the walk to something like to this sort of pose where he's like, what is that? But I think that there could be a reaction in there somewhere, and I think that's what's missing here. Instead of the looking around, I think what if there was some sort of a, like a scrunched up, kind of like I don't know if you've ever used to watch the Dukes of Hazzard, but there used to be this character called um, Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane, and he would kind of get down into this little ball and go, pew, 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 kind of make this noise. And I think, what if he got, in some sort of a pose like this, with the splat on him and his eyes closed, so he's walking along and all of a sudden, splat. This happy-go-lucky walk, and then something like, ooh, splat, what is that? And then he can reach up into, you know, this sort of a pose here, like, what is up there? Um, and I think here's another opportunity for it's like, what is that? And then maybe, I like this pose right here a lot. I think you should hold this pose longer. I think it'd be like, if this had some sort of internal dialogue, it'd be like, what is on my head? Ew, what is that? Is that, or, it'd be like, what is that? Is that, I think it is. It's bird poop. Ew, get it off, get it off, get it off. So I think it would be almost like two realizations, like the initial, what is that? Is that what I think it is? And then like closer examination, it is what I think it is. And then this sort of get it off, get it off, get it off, get it off. I think that would be a clearer read, and probably funnier too. Um, and then maybe it'd be also kind of funny if he wiped it on his leg or something like that. Kind of like, ew, gross, and then just ended up like wiping on a shirt or something like that. You could have fun with like smear textures and stuff like that. Anyway, so then he kind of goes into this. This is kind of like a good. I think this is another opportunity. I think what you need to do is kind of hold poses more and work in poses, and get less movement, if that makes any sense. Like, so this is a good, he kind of comes out of that, and I think we can kind of maybe work in this pose where he kind of his anger builds, and he's just kind of like, ooh, why I oughta, you know. So I think that's a good pose, and I think head would probably be lower. Um, maybe kind of build up maybe some shakes, like the fists start to shake, a little bit, and then he kind of explodes into this sort of, you dumb birds, And I think this is, the pose here is kind of like really bent far back, and I think all you need is some sort of a, kind of like a pose like this, you know, like, you blasted bird, you know, kind of where he's just sort of looking up at the sky. He doesn't have to be so bent, you know, but like just the main action being that he's shaking his fist at these birds, you know. Like, "Concerned birds pooping on my head all the time." You know, and then the main action here would be that the fist is shaking, you know, and he's like, of course, swearing expletives. Um, you know, but I think that's like that's a really extreme pose, and it almost looks like he's challenging them to fisticuffs straight up and down. I think really all you need is something more along the lines of, you know, him like this, where he's just kind of looking up into the sky, not straight up and down, but just kind of like this sort of general pose like this, where the fist is shaking. And then just comedically speaking, um, essentially what's going on is right now you have all this action where his body's moving, his head is moving, his fists are rotating, or you know, his arms are rotating around and stuff like that into this fisticuffs. And I think what happens is when he gets pooped on the second time, um, he you don't really notice it because there's so much body movement, and then there's no reaction really to that. There's kind of like this, his head sort of pops up, but I think there's not really a real solid reaction. And I think if he was in a fairly still pose like this with his arm shaking, he'd be like, "Concerned birds," you know, and then you know, maybe he can kind of stop for a moment and then get pooped on, and then he can react to that pooping, and then it would be clearer. Like there would be less movement when he gets pooped on the second time, so we would read the fact that he got pooped on again, and then he could react to that. And it doesn't have to be a big, um, long, drawn-out reaction. It could just be a real quick reaction that ends your shot. Um, but I think definitely this pose is a little too, um, it's a little too out of control, um, bending wise. You know, it doesn't like, there's a lot of weight over here with the head, and the root is kind of straight up and down, and it's just not a very believable pose. Whereas I think, you know, if you were going to shake your fist at a cloud or at a bird or something like that, you'd probably more like, you kind of just lean back and just kind of, you know, you know, and then the poop would come down, and then maybe he, you know, does some sort of a look like, you know, oh. Um, Now that's a bad, really bad drawing. I don't know what would happen if he was in this pose and got pooped on again. I don't know, maybe you would want to go down into another one of these poses. Oh, he's shaking his fists again. "Constant, stupid birds, always pooping on my head." Something like that. So you can see the change there. That's kind of funny. "Oh, you blasted birds! Oh, I oughta." Anyway, so yeah, I think that you've got a great start here. I love your walk at the beginning. It's a good idea, but all right, the whole piece is a good idea. I like it. I think that you can strengthen it in a few areas with some poses, and then maybe a little bit clearer beats as far as, you know, when things happen. But I think you're doing a great job, and I wish you all the best of luck in your half Ironman, and I will see you in class. Take care.